Hi there, Nick. Hi there, Nicholas Loise, founder of Sales Performance Team, coming at you with my dear friend Phil. And I was asked, what is the worst advice that I've ever gotten? And I think, the worst advice I've ever gotten is this certain demographic profile of salespeople, right? So, oh, you got to get hard charging, you got to get people that are gregarious, you got to get people that are backslapping, the stereotypical salespeople. And so when you're hiring a sales team, those are the people that you need to hire. What I found the opposite would be true.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. The
All right.
demographic of sales, Nick. I think that's so funny, and you're right because I don't find that either. So, did you hear that early in your career or throughout your career? Are you still hearing that?
I still hear that from some business owners that we work with. So that's a great question and a great follow up. And so, I think that people have an archetype in their mind of what a salesperson is, good and bad and indifferent. And then they try to hire to that archetype. And sometimes, therefore, they get snowed because that archetype really isn't going to be successful. They're really good at interviewing for sales jobs and getting sales jobs, right? But they're not good at performing. And so the key and where we like to work in is saying, okay, fully understand and want to respect that you got that archetype, but let's focus on really finding the right persona through some really detailed testing and some really detailed mock interviews. And so to go on that, Phil, kind of what you had said is, well, I find that interesting because I hear that too, still hear it all the time. And maybe the gregarious, outgoing is not the right, especially if you're selling to engineers or CPAs or maybe more analytical types, right? They're going to detract those people. So you want maybe somebody that is more, quiet, right? Reserved, not an extrovert, but an introvert. I'll be honest, some of the best sales people that I've ever had, females, right? I think they do a better job, especially in some very specific sales environments where they need to build consensus, they need to get stuff done. So I think the hard charging, the hill is over here, let's take it salesperson is good for some roles, right? It's great for a hunter role. It's great for maybe getting started, but they probably aren't the best salespeople for you and your sales team. And so the most important thing is find the right archetype, build the right archetype based on your buyer personas. And I might have different salespeople for different buyer personas 24/7, right? So we look at that
Ooh,
all the time.
ooh. Now that's so good. The whole find the right fit for your job. Wow, that's some crazy stuff.
Go
I
figure.
like
Go
that. Right?
figure.
Go figure that. And then to that point, maybe you have different personalities on your team. Boy,
Yeah.
Nick, next you're going to tell me that sales leaders need to coach.
Sales leaders need to coach beyond a shadow of a doubt. Nobody wants to do that, or they think they are coaching and they're not, and they're busy, right? So, I mean, let's not, I'm not beating them up, but, they're doing drive-bys or they're doing, hey, when's this deal coming in? How's this deal doing? That's not coaching, right? It's doing drive-bys. It's going through pipeline reviews, really isn't coaching. The coaching is really, let's talk to me about your opening. What's going on, right? Where are you struggling? What's going on with your funnel, right? Do you have enough in it? How do we drive more into this? So, the importance of coaching, true coaching, of listening to calls, of understanding, of really doing mock practice so that we're not practicing on prospects, or worse, we're not practicing on customers for your sales team and salespeople is so important. It's such a skill. And, Phil, I think you and I talked about it in our last call, kind of when we came up on the ranks, we had a sales manager, if we were lucky enough to have a good one, that maybe drove around with us, right? That maybe, did calls, or we got some windshield time, or we got to sit back. I got to sit back and watch some phenomenal salespeople. When I was just a young lad in my 20s, and not only did they look the part and dress the part and articulate the part, but I had enough gumption to ask the right questions pre and post sales calls, so I understood what was going on. And I got blessed. I had really good sales leaders and sales coaches, and I think that that's a lost art. And I think part of that is we're asking sales leaders in bigger corporations and in corporations to do too much, right? And we're taking a lot of their time away and putting them in a lot of meetings, and they're becoming CRM junkies or jockeys, excuse me, not junkies, maybe both, right? So no such thing as a Freudian slip. They're running Excel spreadsheets, they're just doing so much, and they're just not spending time with coaching. And so, how can we make that the true north of what we need to do? And that's really what we need to do.
Yeah, well, and that's what we want to talk about today, Nick. I think you set that up for me well, and that is it is the true north, and everything old is new again. So we're going
Right.
to talk today about coaching for sales leaders because I do think, first of all, we talked about this last time. Good salespeople don't necessarily make good sales coaches. Let's be
100%.
clear, right? I mean, it's great to drive around, or we called it Y cording, right? We had a cord that split on the phone, and that
Okay.
was how I
Yes.
learned, right? Same thing. It's the
Yeah.
same thing, right? But we call it Y cording. So with that, how do we make sure that we're promoting someone or hiring someone that has the coaching acumen? Because it's almost more important to have a good sales leader hire than it is to have a good sales rep hire, wouldn't you say?
100%, right? 100%. I think a good sales leader is going to attract good sales reps, right? A good sales leader is going to build up good sales reps. A good sales leader, the A performers on your team are always going to perform, right? But they're going to take the B
That's
and
right.
C's and move them up to the next level, right? So they're going to up level them. And that's really what you want in a sales leader, right? So if you have a small sales team or a large sales team, you really want them not only getting the most out of their top performers, but really up leveling the B and C players, right? And and I don't mean to bring this up, but we sat and watched the national championship last night. Ohio, I know that that's where you're at. Didn't make it, but that those are coaches. Those are coaches at the highest level, not only the head coach, but the offensive coach and the defensive coach and the quarterback coach and the play caller coach. And if you watch them, and this is exactly what you said, they when the quarterback came off after 3 and out, right? Went right to the coach. The coach then coached them. You could see them looking at an iPad. You could see them looking at a photo. There's real time coaching going on, just like you and I said with the with the Y cords or the driver on. It's real time coaching. It's not 4 days later, it's 6 months later, a month later, or nebulous training. It's here's what's happening, here's what we're seeing, and this is what we need to do to improve. And it is so critical. To answer your question, I think we as leaders of the organization that are hiring a sales leader and coaching is the key component, we make that our true north, right? So that's part of the conversations. The second thing is we do some testing. Do they have the acumen for coaching? Do they have the patience for sales coaching? Do they want to make their sales people the heroes, or do they want to rush in and to be the hero? And I think you have to just figure that out and do some testing, whether it's a disc testing or different profile testings, to make sure that those are the folks that you're bringing on. And if they aren't it, or they have that shortfall and you still want to bring them on, then you as the leader need to realize that this now becomes part of your personal development with that person. And your one-on-ones is focusing on, talk to me about your coaching, not talk to me about the deals that are coming, or talk to me about where we're at with the sales. Talk to me about Joe. How's the coaching program going with him? Where are you at? What are you working on? And so it needs to change our dialogue, right? And listen, full transparency, Phil, I was the worst when I started my own. I was a good sales leader when I was forced to be a sales leader, and I looked at the mirror and said, I am the worst, right? So what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know how, it's like, the old Jack Nicklaus. How do you hit a one iron? Well, you just swing and hit a one iron, right? He couldn't coach you. He just knew mechanically how to do that. And so when I said, oh, okay, I need to break down what I do. I need to do what I do, break it down so I could coach. Because when I started my company, I had 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds right out of college. We brought them in as interns. We coached them up. and then we brought them on as full-time sales reps. They never were in the field at all until they were kind of on the phone as appointment setters for us and that. So we just kind of built them up, and I built the sales process, but also had to spend a lot of time of coaching, and they had to spend a lot of time on, me. you know, when you're starting out, you don't have the fancy phone systems, right? So they're kind of listening while you're making the phone call. They didn't, yeah, right, exactly like that. And this was phone sales, not Zoom sales or any of that nature. And then we, in the old days, we got in the car, and maybe some of the people that are listening don't know it. It drove to the prospect and sat in the prospect's office, or met them at some place to have some lunch or dinner. And then you had to kind of just do that immediate feedback coaching too. It is a lost art, right? And I don't blame people. I had enough I was okay with myself to know that I wasn't good. So I learned how to be good and look back on my career of people that were really good at it, and read a lot of books, and really, really kind of probably made some errors and apologized for my errors, and just kept on going. And then became a really good sales coach. Right. And then now it's, it's the secret sauce. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I would argue it's the only sauce. I mean, it's no longer an option. If you can't coach, you can't lead. I mean, it's full transparency. You're not going after a big quota if you're not coaching more than deals. If you're just coaching deals and you got a stale pipeline, you're not coaching anything. You're just sitting there like, okay, so Nick, you still don't have anything in pipeline. What's going on? Talk to me. No. Come on. Let's go, right? Let's dive in and let's determine. So why does Nick not have a pipeline? What's going on here? What's happening? And so with that, let's walk through some coaching, Nick. I'm going to be your sales rep here. And let's say I'm at 80% of quota. I've got maybe 2X in my pipe. And, it's the 9th of January today. And so it's looking pretty good. But I've decided that I'm not going to put in a lot of effort, because I think I got this one in the bag. So I'm going to hope like hell that some of these fall over into February. So I get a February without having to work hard either.
So I think the first thing that we do, and listen, I model this a lot from Mike Weinberg, right? I always hate when people take things from other people and they don't share it with where they source it from. And so Mike Weinberg does a lot of good teaching on this. So the first thing we're going to look at is, Phil, let's look at kind of how you finished up the year, right? What was last month's at, what was last quarter at, what was last year at, where were you at, and where are you sitting now, right? Where are you sitting now, and kind of what's going on. So I'm going to look at their production. I'm going to look at their production vis-a-vis where they were quarter, and I'm going to look at their production vis-a-vis the team, right? So where are they ranking on the team? And if I have the benefit of having historical analysis, where last year, Q1 you blew it out of the pipe, right? You just were phenomenal. I see you're kind of tracking a little bit behind on that, kind of what's going on, right? So now I'm going to kind of figure out what's going on. So I'm going to look at production. Where are they at? Where are they going? And where does the rear view mirror tell me, and where does the windshield tell me? So we're going to get into that. So we're going to look at production. Okay, gotcha. I see what's happening. Hear you on that. Now let's go through what's going on with your deal flow. Talk to me a little bit about each one, right? Boom. And then now these are me asking questions. This isn't them diverting, right? These, where are we at with each of these things? And if I have the history of last year or a couple of years, I could say, listen, I noticed you're at 2X, but historically you've run at 4X or you've run at 5X, right? Because we know historically that we only get X amount of closes, right? We only get X amount, and we got stuff going on. We don't know what, every quarter is like a box of chocolates. If we Forrest Gump, right? We don't know what we're going to bite into, right? And I know that maybe we're holding back a little bit. So is there something going on that I don't know about, right? So now I'm going to try to dig into, I'm going to use the production to see if there's anything up here or in here that's going on, right? Is there anything going on that I know about? What's happening, where are you at? Then I'm going to flip it to their calendar. Okay, gotcha. What's going on, right? So I see where you're at, right? How many meetings are you having, right? What does your future meetings look like? What does your production look like during your power hour? What are you doing, right? What are the dials doing? What's all that stuff going on? So now we're going to use production then we're going to use pipeline, and then we're going to use what is their personal production or what does their calendar look like. So I could get a feel for what's happening with them and where they want to go. Right. And it's not do better, do more, do better. It's okay. Let's dig in. Okay. I see. Tell me more about that. Okay. Very much. Why do you say that? What's going on with that? Right. And so we got to manage their hearts and their heads. Right. And I'm a firm believer that, go back to, Jim Harbaugh managed the hearts and the heads of that team, even if he wasn't there on the pipeline on the sideline, excuse me, for those 3 games, he still had the hearts and the heads of all of those players. And that's what we as the leaders do. I had a great, not leader, but somebody that trained me. Gentleman was named Quentin Studer, and he ran a group that's called the Studer Group. And my guess is he's still around or it's been sold off. And it was in the healthcare space. I was a VP of marketing and business development for a healthcare organization. And I found him. And he said something that is instilled with me from this day is that you don't realize how much of your team's heart and head you have every day, right? They take you home and you don't even know it. They're talking about you at the dinner table or the breakfast table or the Saturday brunch table, and you may not even know that. So that's a very delicate ecosystem, and you need to manage that, right? So reward and recognition, right? How do you, I'm a big believer whenever somebody's in my coaching program, send personal notes home, even little $10, Starbucks cards. Hey, great job with that deal. Boom, boom, boom. Constantly reinforce, but really make it heartfelt, right? So we're metrics driven, right? We're using what we know to move the needle, but we're also focusing on here and really a lot of what's going on in here and in their gut to really move them to the next level. Because it's all about performance.
Wow. That's a master class right there in 6 minutes, which I appreciate. No, I mean, really, that's really great stuff. And I think Quentin's quote there is so powerful for all of us to think about. You don't realize how much of your team's heart and head you have every day,
Yeah.
because they take it home. I think that's powerful. So let's talk about how we become better, how we understand that we stink. I mean, your point about, because I'll tell you, I sucked. My first leadership role, Nick, I stole it was my credit to steal, but I stole the credit right out of my team's mouth. Yeah. I would do that, right? I'd be that EP bird, like, bloop, nope, that one's mine. Nope, boop, you didn't do that. That was me. Yeah. And it's like, that's not your role. Your role is to set them up so that they can eat, not so that you can be the fattest calf on the barn, right, in the pasture. So talk to me about that, Nick. How do we get better when we don't realize that we need help? Is there a way to do that? I mean, can our sales, can like the VP come by and smack us on the head, or what do we need to do so that we can get that maybe when we're not as self-aware as we could be?
So I think the first thing is, who's listening and what's their role, right? And you and I talked about this all the last time, or we've talked about it in our phenomenal conversations, because I learned 15 things, within 6 minutes from you also, right? But business owners always complain about employees that they don't act like business owners. And you and I are both of the, well, if they were business owners mindset, they would become your competition. They aren't business owners, right? So we now have to realize that. And so we have to kind of come at it from that perspective. And, the business owner, if it's that who we're speaking to in this segment, or the VP of sales or the sales manager, all kind of have different things, and they kind of have to realize that. But the first thing comes from self-reflection, right? Of just realizing, okay, what do I need to do and how do I need to get better? And it really is all about teamwork. I was listening to some reels, right? The other day, just waiting for like a, car repair or something. And I was watching and and it's all about a guy was going through his team, and he was a builder, and he's like, these guys right here. And he had their pictures on the wall. These guys go into basements, run jackhammers, break up concrete, carry concrete upstairs, right? And I can never do that. I'm just too old. I don't want to do that, bro. But I need those guys. And so you have to have the hearts and the heads of those guys, right? And I'm using that example just like your salespeople, because the salespeople are grinding it out. They're going into the basement by picking up the phone and making the cold calls. They're hitting the jackhammer by doing the 50 follow-up emails, right? They are carrying the concrete upstairs by deals that could get lost and have their heart broken, right? The concrete that falls on their foot. You have to realize that they're doing the hard work in each and every day. So you have to come about it from that perspective. And you just driving by and swooping in as the hero and taking the fish out of their off of their line and putting it on your line, just any emotional bank account deposits that you made, you just lost, right? You just lost that for good. So you're always making the emotional bank account deposits. If you think about the old Stephen Covey stuff that we learned, in the 90s and the 2000s, and that still is really, 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 really important. The next thing so don't do that, right? But have self-awareness and just say, "Ooh, I just did that. Let me just reverse engineer this." A salesperson, and I had to jump in and help him help him move a client to yes. He's like, "Oh, you could want to split the commission?" I said, "No, that's my role. I will never take a commission from a salesperson. One is you work too hard for that, and two is I just kind of came in. The meal was made." Right? The meal was set at the table. I just sat down and poured the wine, and everybody said, "Oh, it was great." Right? So we have to realize goes back to what we're saying. The jackhammer guy goes into the basement, has done all the jackhammer and pounded the concrete, called the concrete upstairs. And it's like me coming to the car and saying, "Hey, this is great. Let me drive it let me drive it away." I didn't do any of the work. And so you as the sales leader need to realize that. Another thing you need to realize is you need to get your internal motivation from your team's success. It's historically, as
Yeah.
salespeople, we get our internal motivation on the win of the deal. And now we have to reverse engineer that, manage our hearts and heads, and say, I need to get that when that SDR really grows. And I didn't think they were going to make it, and they made it. When that rep hit quota and they grinded it out to the 28th day of the month, just pounding it out to get it, that becomes our internal motivation. You have to be more focused on them winning than you winning. And that's tough, right? And that's tough for the archetype of a salesperson that now has become the sales leader. There's times I think about this, Phil, and I'm sure you do too, because you're very introspective, that I wonder, I don't think it will ever work, but I wonder if non-sales people could become sales leaders. I don't think they can, because salespeople are horrible, right? If you've never sold, I'm never going to listen to you, right? And
Yeah.
so
Only from a respect, though, not from a skill perspective.
yeah, right. Correct. So you almost like, and it goes back to, okay, so almost you need to bring a performance coach in that could help work on the mushy stuff that the salesperson, sales leader isn't, but they're going to, if you've never structured a deal, right? In fact, I was talking to, somebody that was a VP of marketing and now runs her own marketing firm, right? And she goes, I used to always fight with the VP of sales by saying, these deals should close faster. Now that I'm running my own book of business and my own deal flow, you realize, oh, there's nuances. And the stuff that they would say in the meetings is actually true. Well, something happened and their Q3 just blew up. And so therefore I always thought these deals should be closing until I had to get into the trenches, until I had to get downstairs and beat down the concrete with the jackhammer and carry that up. No one, till you've ever done that, you never judge it, right? And we all think that this is easy. And salespeople, listen, they for some reasons they do deserve it, but they all walk around, with the target on their back because they act certain ways in certain organizations. But it is a tough job, and we need to realize that, right? And if you want to do it, then you go ahead and do it, right? I had a great client, still do, and I remember his inside sales, like his customer service team was bitching about the salespeople, like, you want to make cold calls, go ahead and do it, right?
Right.
You think it's that easy? Pick up the phone 100 times a day and call strangers and see what they say to you and hang up. And we were calling in construction. Those, it's not like we were calling social workers that are everybody's warm and fuzzy, right? So it was, it was a challenge. But it's just the nature of the beast. So How
Yeah.
does that answer a long
Yeah,
answer
no,
for a short
that's great.
question?
No,
Yeah.
that's a great answer. So with that, okay, so we want to up level skills as a coach. You mentioned that you read books and you stay sharp and you do these things. So give us two or three books that you've enjoyed for sales leaders that they can have. And if you've got some resources too, save those for the end, but give us a couple books or a couple ideas first that folks can use to up level themselves.
Right, one I mentioned, right? So I think Weinberg, right? He's got a new book out. It's on my bookshelf. Full transparency, I haven't read it, but if it's as good as Sales
Yeah.
Management Simplified is phenomenal. I think it's like a sales leader should go to that book every year and read it. And I think his new book is probably even going to be better, and it's
Oh,
probably
first
shorter.
time manager.
First time
Yeah.
manager, and I think you may have even had him on your show.
Not
Great
yet.
guy.
Yeah.
I only know him like from social media and just sending messages back and forth. But just he's an avid golfer. It sounds like a guy I'd love to play some golf with. So that's the first one, right? You should have that on your book. I think some of the older ones that we talked a little bit about, right? Principle centered leadership, or the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think Covey really did some breakthrough work there, right? And really focusing on that and really focusing on the people. And then so that gives you 3. Let's give you one more that I really liked, which really Quentin Studer has a book. I think it's called Service Excellence. It's old school book, right? He's probably rewritten it 50 times, but it talks a little bit. There's a lot of operational things in there, but there is the things of kind of how to create teams and teamwork and the skill, and up leveling skill, but also, doing the little things that matter, the soft side of the business that matters. Because I think in sales, we default to the hard. What's coming in? What have we sold? We got to get to the soft side. So those are 3, right? There's probably a billion others that your audience will know of.
Yeah.
And then what was the other question
And then
was
what are your
me.
resources, Nick? Because I'd love to get some your people's hands on some of your stuff.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for that. So if they go to sales pack, at salesperformanceteam.com, salespack.salesperformanceteam.com, we got a bunch of, and I'll give it the links so you can put in the show notes.
Yeah.
Got a lot of sources for that. We are just putting the finishing touches on a sales coaching program for sales leaders, and that does a lot of that. And there's the one or two episodes that I'll give your folks for free, right? So they just kind of just ping you and you could ping me. And it's really how to run those meetings. So what does that look like? So that masterclass in running those meetings. And so we have that for some folks. And if they just want to learn more about us, they could hit our website, or they could shoot me an email. And I wrote a book. It's on Amazon. It's really meant for business owners, which is I think it's called the Ultimate Guide to Managing Your Sales Team. I think it's a lead generation book. It's just a quick book. One is because though I'm an avid reader, I'm a slow reader, and most entrepreneurs are slow readers, and so they could get it done in in an afternoon type book, right? So those are the things. I also think anything that you do, right? They should go back and listen to these older shows are phenomenal that you do, but also change their thinking. So and you force people to change their thinking, and a lot of times we don't want to do that because it's muscle memory, right? What we know is what we know, but to get to the next level, we have to kind of change our approach and change our thinking. And I don't do enough of that, right? And I kind of have to force myself to think and change the way I approach. So listening to your shows, having a conversation with you, bringing you on to just take a look at stuff and getting that coaching, because we all need that, right? Right now, it's what is it? It's the 3rd or the 8th of January, right? Somewhere in there. I don't even know. But I know that yesterday morning and I know this morning the gym was packed. Absolutely packed. Couldn't get on a treadmill, couldn't get to the weight bench. I know that by the 20th, it won't be that packed. I know by February 2nd, it's not going to be that packed. But what I do know is the folks that have coaches, right, like you, that they'll still be there. They'll be there a year from now, getting good gains. And also, most importantly, getting those fine-tuned adjustments so they don't injure themselves or injure their business. And that's the importance of what you do and the work that you do with your clients. So, you know, we all think we got it covered. And I think when we raise our hand and realize that we don't have it covered, that's when we really make the strides, right? You know, what is it? You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with somebody, right? Is that the old analogy? And so
Yeah.
that's the important thing, right? So, you know, you can never get enough help or get enough outside just people to listen, and listening to this podcast is the first step.
Well, thank you, Nick. Well, with that, right, I think that's a great place to leave folks here. If you're thinking, how the hell do I get started? Start learning and raise your hand and acknowledge that you need help. I don't care where your team is. I get help. That's one of the reasons why I have this podcast, because I get to talk to folks like you, Nick. You coach me. I get coaching from Weinberg. Mark Hunter coaches me. Anthony Andrina coaches me. I mean, you know,
those are all the greats. Look at you,
right? I mean, yeah.
That's the Hall of Fame there, baby. That's the Hall of Fame.
That's because
I'm to even be mentioned in that same sentence.
Oh,
that made my day. I'm going to call my mom tonight and just say, listen,
I'll call her. I got her number. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, Nick. Well, this was awesome as always. You got to get to know Nick Loise. Nick is the bomb. He's got so much great information. He breaks it down and makes it simple. So get to know Nick. We'll pop his link in the show notes so that you can get to him. But please, I encourage you folks, if you're looking to up-level your game, the first step, raise your hand and acknowledge that you need some help. Nick, it is always so fun to talk to you. Thanks, man.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for working with the entrepreneurs that you do, and small business owners and salespeople, and everything that you do. You know, top